Greetings, friends. It's Pat coming to you with another episode of Let's Talk Travel. And our episode this evening, actually for the entire month of February, is going to be a little bit of a departure from what we normally do. Those of you who follow us regularly know that we usually feature guests from some aspect of the travel industry. And while the focus is going to remain in February, we're going to be focusing on travel, but we're going to be talking to people who aren't necessarily involved in the travel industry per se. And our first episode tonight, I am welcoming Jenn Deal to join us. And I've purposely not done much introduction here because Jenn, I would love to start by just having you. First of all, you have a very unusual, interesting, and impressive resume. And I purposely haven't done that introduction because I want you to share what you do. Uh, no one knows what you do better than you. Could we just start? You're in the legal profession. Could you start and just share a little bit about that aspect of your resume to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So, I am a lawyer. I'm a partner at a big global law firm in Atlanta. And as a lawyer, I am in the business of helping other businesses protect their brands. So, I do trademark infringement work, false advertising, unfair competition, anything that comes up under the brand protection realm.
And that seems, and right off the face of things, so far removed from travel. But, and as you know, for many years, uh, before I got into the travel business, and when I was starting the travel business, I worked in law offices, and so we were there at that same firm for a number of years. You were newly out of law school, but I've observed firsthand the demands that these large firms, especially, can make on young attorneys starting out and trying to advance that partnership track that we all know about. And I've just seen how it can just literally suck up the life of younger attorneys. I'm guessing that you may have seen a little bit of this as well, maybe experienced it.
Yes, I definitely have seen it. And I think it's true generally of the legal industry that there tends to be a lot of overwork. And especially for young lawyers, right? There's this, and I think this is true of other professional industries. It's sort of a self-selection bias. You tend to get the high achievers and the perfectionists, the people who are already prone to overwork, and then you put them in an industry where overwork tends to be expected. And so I think lawyers come in with this perception that the way to be a good lawyer is to never say no to projects, never take any time for yourself. I certainly felt that way coming in, even though no one ever said that to me. It was something, I took on myself and something I saw other people around me model. And so I think it's pretty common for young lawyers to come in and think that overworking is the way to succeed.
And, you guys, you have, particularly the young associate attorneys, you have those billable hour requirements and things. So some of that is just built in. Uh,
Absolutely.
you may come in and work 12-hour days and only be able to bill 6 hours of that. So it is it's a struggle, and I've observed it. I know a number of Kilpatrick attorneys actually. Many of them have become clients as we moved in, and others I don't maybe know, but I still follow a lot of the attorneys on LinkedIn. And a while back, I started to notice, it was my first indication that you were doing something a little different. I started to see a series of posts from you, and eventually it got to the topic of vacations. And from my perspective, when I see an attorney talking about vacations, it's like, what? This is
Right.
different. I mean, frankly, during my years, attorneys didn't. I mean, they may come in and say, "How was your vacation?" "Oh, it was fine. We had a good time." But it wasn't a big topic of conversation, that they almost, despite a lot of lip service to balance and taking time off and all of that, uh, attorneys and professionals in general, I think, frequently are apologetic
Yeah.
about taking even a few days off. You've observed this, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely, and experienced it myself. I do think attorneys are happy to mention that they went on vacation, but I tend to find that there's a lot of guilt around it, and I tend to find that it's not a real vacation. They are vacationing, but laptop always comes with you. You're always on 24/7. I think this is especially true of younger attorneys. You know, you get to a point where you really can understand what's urgent and what isn't urgent. But when you are first starting in the legal industry or in any professional industry, everything feels important and you don't really know how to distinguish. And so the way we tend to respond is either by not taking the vacation at all or by taking a working vacation, which is not a vacation.
Right, right. And I understand that from the young attorney's perspective. It's hard. I mean, not to be unkind, but just the personality profile of uh, the higher end lawyers. Uh, they're type A, uh, and you just can be a bulldozer, so they push it and the associates back up and just whatever. So it it's hard to get that balance and start to strike out. But about a year ago, this is when you started to, was it just about a year ago, I think, that you branched out in a totally new direction. um so tell us about that new initiative. This is fascinating.
So I am still lawyering, but I am also a life coach. During the pandemic, I decided to get certified as a life coach and started a side business where I am helping high achieving women, so professionals, entrepreneurs, anyone who has done the things that they are supposed to do, and still feels stuck and unfulfilled. Like they've checked all the boxes and they should feel happy and they should feel satisfied and they just don't. So I'm helping them figure out how to create the life that they want and get that satisfaction by, setting boundaries and learning how to stop people pleasing and all of those things that women tend not to be great at.
Yeah.
I got turned on to life coaching about 4 years ago. It was not something I'd ever considered, as a lawyer. It sounded very fluffy to me. But I found a podcast called The Lawyer Stress Solution at a time when I was really struggling with, I have an anxiety disorder, and I was really struggling with my anxiety, doing all the right things, therapy, medication, all of that. And it didn't feel like it was working. And so I came across a life coach that really resonated with me, and I joined her program and just saw myself making shifts that I had been unable to make before. And fast forward to the pandemic, and I saw that people who previously hadn't had to deal with anxiety or depression beyond, the normal levels of sadness and anxiety that everyone has, just really everyone was struggling. And so I wanted to start teaching people the things that I had learned that had really changed my life. And so got certified and started my own business, and it's been really fun.
And I can just tell you, I follow you on LinkedIn, and I really, you are good at this.
Thank you.
You you
I
you
thought about it
really,
a lot.
it's really, you have really uncovered a gift, I think, and you're sharing it with other people who are struggling. Was there anything the pandemic, of course, was huge, and boy, did it just knock it just knocked the pins out from under a lot of people, uh, at a lot of different levels. But was there anything in particular aside from the pandemic that really hit you, that's kind of the impetus to start this?
So, my favorite thing, one of my favorite things, probably my favorite thing about lawyering has always been coaching and mentoring young lawyers, because I think it's a hard job. There are a lot of hard jobs out there. But in the legal industry, we don't often talk about how hard the job is. Everyone just does it and does the overwork and feels overwhelmed, and no one really talks about it. And so I think that I finally got to a point in my career where I felt comfortable being as a partner and having gone through, over a decade of dealing with the things that young associates are dealing with, of speaking out about it and opening those dialogues, because I think that even just the talking about it alone is so helpful to for someone else who is in a position that you want to be in, or who has been through what you have been through, to acknowledge that it's hard, and to try and help give you some ideas of what to do differently so that you don't have to have that same experience. I just felt really motivated to do it. And the pandemic gave me the opportunity because, all of the things I had been doing previously, a lot of them went out the window and I had some time on my hands. So it was just a good, um, it just sort of all worked out.
The stars aligned.
Exactly.
Okay. So for our listeners who may not have ever had a life coach or know what exactly that entails, could you give us a little bit of a deeper dive into what you do? And is there like a typical point of pain that motivates clients to finally seek your services?
Yeah, the life coaching industry is so broad that if you are having any sort of issue, I think you can probably find a coach for you. I tend to work with people on people pleasing and perfectionism, because I think that shows up in high achieving women and in all people in the professional industry. So, with the perfectionism, it's just this idea, which is completely incorrect, that if you are good enough, perfect enough, if you do all of the things and you get all of the degrees and the titles, that that's going to make you happy. And so I end up working with people who have done those things and they don't feel the way they want to feel. And so the goal of it is to figure out, all right, what is it that you actually need to do to create that satisfaction right now? Not by doing anything differently, not by achieving some other title or changing jobs or whatever, but what can you do to change that right now? And then on the people pleasing, I think this is so true of women and people of marginalized communities. We just spend a lot of time giving pieces of ourselves in an effort to make other people happy
Mm,
or to get other people to approve of you. And that just leads to overwhelm, it leads to overwork, it leads to resentment, and ultimately you can't make people happy. That's on them to do. And so working with people to really get rid of those long-standing habits and patterns that they've had, and just even notice them. Sometimes we don't even notice we're doing it. And so to have an objective person point out, do you see what you're doing here, allows a person to create some
mm.
shifts.
And that is so true, and I've seen some of that in my younger years where I have noticed that I called it sometimes the mommy bird syndrome because it seemed
Mhm.
like you were always just shoving something for somebody else,
Yep.
and pretty soon you were like just a dried out sponge that you'd given everything and there was nothing left, and we don't take time sometimes to think about what makes me happy, what
Yeah.
gives me joy, and to make sure that some of those that we put that in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people, when you tend to people please, you're very worried about being selfish. And we don't stop to consider whether or not you are actually selfish is a completely different topic, but we don't actually stop to consider that taking care of ourselves is actually selfless in a lot of ways. Because if we do want to take care of other people and we do want to show up as our best selves, you cannot do that if you are not taking that time to rest and to take care of yourself. You're giving people a half or less than half full version
Yeah,
of you.
and there's a reason when you listen to that safety spiel on an airliner, there's a reason they tell you to
Yes.
put that oxygen on yourself before others, because if you haven't taken care of yourself, you're not going to do anything for anybody if you crash
Exactly.
and burn. So, obviously, Jenn, just on your posts on LinkedIn, it's easy to see that somewhere along the line in the process of all of this, you have come to understand the value of vacations. Here we go,
Yes.
folks. I told you we were going to do, we were still going to talk travel. So here it comes. Could you share with us, kind of give us maybe your top three reasons why you counsel your clients on the advisability of taking that time off from the workplace and guilt free on that?
Yeah, the guilt-free part is the part they really have to work on. So I think that part of it ties into what we were just talking about. Everyone that I work with, and most people I know, want to give their best effort and they want to be good at their job and they want to be creative and they want to be productive. And you cannot do that without rest. If you Google it, there are tons of studies out there that actually indicate and show that you get your best ideas when you're restful, you're more productive if you take breaks. But we tend to ignore that and tell ourselves that if we do more, then we will be better. And I think it's the opposite of that. So, my advice is always if you actually want to be the best version of yourself, then you have to take that time to rest. Um, I think another piece of it, especially if you are in a role like mine where you are supervising or managing other people, is you have to model good behavior. You can tell people to take vacations all you want, but if you're not willing to do it, then the people who you are supervising or managing aren't going to feel comfortable doing it. So if you're in that supervisory role, then I would really encourage you to consider what behavior you are modeling for other people. And then the last piece of it is I know that we think this all the time, and I think that the pandemic maybe has shown us a little bit more of this, but we have one life to live, and there's no prize at the end for overwork. You don't get an award because you worked the most hours. And so taking that time to do something that you want to do, it's not something that you're ever going to regret, especially if you can learn how to do it without taking the working vacation and without feeling guilty about doing it.
Yeah. I have a good friend who's worked as a volunteer in hospice for many
Mm.
years. And one thing that she always says is that at the end of life, when she's talking with people that know that they are facing that end of life, what they want to talk about and share is the people they've known, their families, and the places they've been.
Yeah.
And so it's the things those lifetime memories, those relationships. I have a good friend, and he used to work there at Kilpatrick, and I won't mention his name, but you would know him. Everybody loved him, and he had me quote a Alaska Vacation umpteen times. I don't know. He just
Mm.
really he was really wanted to go. Now he wasn't an attorney. He was in the support staff area, but he just never could really make himself take off and take that Alaska vacation. And then he ended up disabled and on dialysis and unable to travel. And he said to me one day, he says, I'm so sorry I never took that trip to Alaska. It was
Yeah.
a regret. And that is sad when we work so hard and we're trying to make all this, we're just run, do it and trying to do it all. And then it comes to the point where you have regrets for all of the things that went undone, the important things, the things that would have enriched your life and given you
Right.
joy. I have a question here I wanted to ask Jen. Let's say I'm asking for a friend here, but what do you think about the working vacation? I'm interested in your thoughts on this particular. Should you? Shouldn't you? Can you give yourself permission to disconnect completely? Or on the other hand, can you give yourself permission to stay at least somewhat connected? What do you think on that topic?
I think it's really individual. I think what you have to do is decide in advance what you are going to do on the vacation. So if you're telling yourself you're not going to work, but in the back of your mind you think you are, and so you take the laptop and you put off the work before you go with the idea that all right, maybe if I get a little free time I'll work, and then you end up working, you even the time when you're not working, you're still thinking about work and you're thinking about it looming over your head because you've already basically told yourself in advance that, yes, this is a vacation, but I'm going to work. And so, my thought, and I tried this recently, as we're talking about my posts, that's what inspired it. It was my first vacation where I didn't work and I didn't feel guilty about it because I decided in advance that I wasn't going to work and I did what I needed to do to make that happen. But I also think that if you want to work, say you want to keep on top of your emails because you don't want to come back and have 500 emails the Monday, you return from vacation. I think that's totally fine. Just decide in advance and stick to that plan. Because when you do that decision in advance, then you don't have all of the negative emotion and all of the wishy washiness of, am I going to work? Am I not going to work? All of that you take along with you on the vacation. And then you end up not enjoying it anyways, even if you're not working.
Yeah.
So I think you have to decide and decide
Okay.
why you're doing it. Do you
I,
like your reasons for working?
yeah. I think that I've finally gotten a little bit of balance on this. I used to work way too much on vacation. But I can't imagine anything really, being honest, I can't imagine anything more stressful for me than to leave my laptop at home
Yeah.
and to not know what's going on, and not, if my clients had issues, not to be totally inaccessible. I think that would totally, I can't think of anything right off the top here that would stress me more than to not be aware if somebody was having issues. And
Yeah.
uh, I've got some sub agents working with me now that I can hand things off to and use as a contact. But I really, for my own mental health, I still feel, uh, full disclosure, folks, I really, I think I just got to have my access to that email or my stress level is not going to decrease during vacation. I'm
Yeah,
going to be,
and it's so funny you say that because part of I think it's sort of a two-step process. First, you get to the part where you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna work, I'm gonna check my email 1 hour a day, but that's all I'm gonna do." And then you have to figure out why is it that you feel like you cannot be inaccessible during that time, because it's not true that you can't, right? You could make the choice. There are definitely some trade-offs, there always are, but a lot of it's just our thoughts around it. Like this whole idea that we've internalized that we always have to be accessible, and then in order to give good customer service, you have to be available 24/7 or whatever it is. There's some thought you have that makes you anxious. It's not the not being online. It's the mindset around what happens if I'm not online and the trade-offs that come from that. So I think and if it works for you, then great.
yeah.
Whatever
And
feels good.
and and now that I have a couple of agents who have
Yeah.
gained enough experience to where I can say, uh, if you have an urgent matter, contact them.
Yes.
I'm feeling much more at ease these days in just, doing a morning and evening check of the email instead of having to be feel like I had to just
Right.
be connected huge blocks of the day. Jen, I feel like I'm mindful of the time, and I feel like we barely still scratch the surface of your vacation wisdom. Uh, could we plan to have you back again later in the month to talk more in depth and delve a little deeper into the topic of the importance of vacations, and maybe have you be a guest at the end of the month?
Yeah, I would love that. It's something that I have worked hard to figure out how to be good at vacations. And so I'd love to talk more about it.
Okay, Jen. Well, thank you so much. And folks, uh, we are so thankful for having you out there. And hopefully, if you're a busy person, a professional, uh, and Jen would be a great resource for you. If you struggle with the issue of time off or any of these topics that we've talked about, getting balance in your life as a busy professional and probably a mom, and who knows what is on your plate. But I have benefited so much when I have engaged the services of a business coach, and these days, I think that a life coach can really save a life and make it a life worth living with a little insight from somebody who can help you get a better perspective and some tools to work through some of that. Jen, thank you again. And guys, if you enjoyed our evening this evening, I can't quite reach our wine stopper, but I have a wine stopper for those of you listening live this evening. If only for live listeners, I have the Murano glass. I have another one of those beautiful blue wine stoppers. If you're listening live, just I want you to type Jenn, Jenn, in the comments section, and we'll enter you in our drawing for the Murano glass wine stopper. They're great to take on vacation with you. If you want to open that bottle of wine in the stateroom, you'll have something to preserve it later if you don't finish the whole thing. Thanks again, Jen. We'll be in touch about another interview later in the line. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. See you next time.